The sun rose over the dusty streets of Red Rock Gulch, painting the wooden buildings with streaks of gold and crimson. The town was quiet, except for the occasional creak of a swinging saloon door and the distant clatter of a wagon over uneven cobblestones. In this small, unforgiving town lived a boy no older than 12, known to everyone as Eli, an orphan since the death of his parents in a fire years ago. He had learned to navigate the harsh realities of frontier life with nothing but wits, determination, and a scrappy pair of boots that had seen better days. Eli's morning ritual was simple. He would sweep the front of the abandoned general store where he slept, collect whatever scraps he could find for breakfast, and watch the sun climb over the hills. He often wondered about the world beyond Red Rock Gulch, the vast plains, the jagged mountains, and the rivers that carved through the land like silver ribbons. There was a hunger for adventure in him, one that couldn't be sated by the dusty streets or the occasional kindness of townsfolk who tolerated him more than they cared for him that morning. As he carried a battered bucket of water from the town well, Eli noticed something unusual near the river that curved around the outskirts of town. There, amidst the reeds and the shimmering reflections of dawn, was a girl. She was small, perhaps a year or two younger than Eli, and she moved with an uneven, limping gait. Her clothes were simple, patched with care, but her eyes bright, alert, and wary held a depth that spoke of hardship and courage. Eli crouched behind a cluster of barrels, observing her silently. Something about her presence tugged at his heart. She was alone, vulnerable, and clearly in need of help. Yet, in the wilderness of the Old West, approaching a stranger, especially one he knew nothing about, was risky. Stories of outlaws, hostile encounters, and wild animals were enough to keep most children, or even adults, away from strangers. But Eli had never been one to turn away from someone in need. He remembered his parents' words, whispered during rare moments of warmth. Bravery isn't about fighting. It's about helping when no one else will. Summoning every ounce of courage, Eli approached the riverbank carefully. Each step was deliberate, silent against the dry dirt and scattered stones. He noticed the girl struggling to cross a shallow stretch of the river, her small hands gripping a fallen tree trunk as if it were a lifeline. The current tugged at her legs, and the mud threatened to swallow her small boots. Without thinking twice, Eli called out, "Hey, do you need a hand?" The girl froze, her dark eyes widening in surprise and suspicion. Then, after a tense moment, she nodded slowly. Eli stepped closer, balancing himself against a low-hanging branch. "I can help you across," he said, voice steady. "Just hold on." As he extended a hand, the first rays of sunlight glinted on the water, casting golden sparks across the rippling surface. For a fleeting moment, the dangers of the world, the outlaws, the wild animals, the harsh townsfolks, too, fade away. In that quiet, sun-drenched moment, two lost souls had found each other. Little did Eli know. Helping this limping girl across the river would set off a chain of events that would change both their lives forever. Shadows were already stirring in the distance, and the peaceful dawn would soon give way to challenges neither of them could yet imagine. The river's water sparkled in the early morning light, flowing with a quiet persistence that belied the danger it carried. Eli's small boots sank slightly into the muddy bank as he edged closer to the limping girl. Her dark hair clung to her forehead, damp with dew, and her thin hands trembled as she gripped a makeshift walking stick. She looked at him cautiously, her eyes darting to the current, as if expecting it to rise and pull her under at any moment. "I'm Eli," he said softly, not wanting to startle her. "I'll help you cross." She hesitated, a flicker of doubt passing over her face. Then, slowly, she nodded. "My name is Nayeli," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the gentle roar of the water. Eli noticed the limp in her left leg, the result of some injury that had healed poorly, making every step a careful calculation. The river, shallow in some places, but treacherous in others, twisted through the dense trees along its banks. Fallen logs and slippery rocks created precarious paths, and Eli could see that Nayeli was struggling with each step. "Grab my hand," he said, kneeling to put himself at her level. "I won't let you fall." Together, they began to cross. The first log wobbled beneath their weight, and Eli's heart raced as he balanced one foot in front of the other. Nayeli clung to him, her trust tentative but growing. He could feel the fear radiating from her, but also a fierce determination. She was surviving, just as he had always survived in Red Rock Gulch, halfway across. The river's current tugged harder, and Nayeli stumbled. Eli caught her under the arms, pulling her back to steady ground. "You're okay," he reassured her, though his own legs shook from exertion. "We're almost there." As they continued, Eli noticed markings on Nayeli's clothing, faint paint pattern on her shawl, symbols he did not understand. They hinted at a story, a tribe, a life beyond the confines of his dusty town. He wanted to ask, but for now, safety came first. Finally, they reached the opposite bank, and Nayeli sank to the ground, gasping, her face a mixture of relief and exhaustion. Eli offered her a hand, helping her to sit up. "You're safe now," he said. They rested for a moment, listening to the river's constant flow and the soft chirping of early birds. The morning mist hovered above the water, lending the scene an ethereal glow. Eli realized that, for the first time in a long while, he felt connected to someone, not just as a helper, but as a friend. Nayeli glanced at him, a faint smile touching her lips. It was the first sign of trust, a fragile bond forming in the quiet wilderness. But danger lingered, even in the golden morning light. Eli's instincts, honed from years of survival, whispered that they were not alone. He scanned the tree line, noting subtle movements, a rustle of leaves, a shadow crossing the bank. For now, there was no immediate threat, but he knew the Old West was unforgiving. Their journey had only just begun. "I need to get to my home," Nayeli said finally, her voice steady despite her fatigue. They're coming for me." Eli nodded, understanding the unspoken urgency. "Then we better keep moving. I'll help you wherever you need to go." As they continued along the riverbank, stepping carefully over rocks and fallen branches, Eli felt a surge of purpose. Helping Nayeli wasn't just an act of kindness, it was the start of something larger, something dangerous, something that would test every ounce of courage he had. And somewhere, hidden in the distance, shadows began to stir. 30 sets of eyes, trained and relentless, were already following the pair, their approach silent but inevitable. The dawn of adventure and of peril had just begun. Eli and Nayeli moved cautiously through the dense forest, the river now behind them, its gentle babble fading into the distance. The early sun filtered through the thick canopy, casting dappled patterns on the ground. Every snap of a twig beneath their feet seemed amplified, and Eli's senses were on high alert. He noticed the tension in Naeli's posture, her shoulders hunched, eyes scanning constantly for signs of danger. "You're quiet," Eli finally said, breaking the silence. "Are you scared?" Naeli's gaze dropped to the ground. "I am," she admitted softly, "but not of the forest. They're the ones I fear." She paused, drawing a shaky breath. "My tribe. They live but some men, warriors from another tribe, they want to take me back." Eli frowned, trying to process her words. "Why? What did you do?" Naeli shook her head. "I didn't do anything. I couldn't stay. I had to leave." Her voice trembled. "I can't explain everything now. I just know that if they find me—" She trailed off, eyes glistening. The weight of her words pressed on Eli. He had known hardship, but nothing like this. He realized that helping her wasn't just about crossing a river. It was about protecting her from something far bigger than himself. A shiver ran down his spine as he glanced at the shadows dancing through the trees. Danger was real, and it was coming. As they walked, Naeli began to share fragments of her life. She spoke of her village, tucked away along the river's bend, where families lived in harmony with the land. She spoke of the elders, the traditions, and the songs that marked each season. Her words painted a vivid picture, and Eli felt a strange sense of awe. She was not just a girl in need. She was a keeper of stories, of a heritage older than the town he had always known. "You're very brave," Eli said, admiration in his voice. "I've never met anyone like you." Naeli smiled faintly, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Brave isn't the word," she said quietly. "I'm just trying to survive. You've already done something brave by helping me." The pair found a small clearing beside a fallen tree where they decided to rest. Eli rummaged through his small satchel, offering her a piece of bread and a few dried fruits. Naeli accepted, her hands shaking slightly as they ate. Eli noticed signs of recent passage-broken branches, faint footprints in the mud, and subtle marks on the bark of trees. His stomach tightened. "We're being followed," he whispered. Naeli's eyes widened. "They're fast. 30 warriors, at least. If they catch up." Her voice faltered, and for the first time, Eli saw pure fear. He clenched his fists, determination hardening inside him. "We'll stay ahead," he said firmly. "I don't know how, but we will. You're not alone in this. I'll protect you." For a moment, silence fell between them, broken only by the distant cry of a hawk. The forest seemed alive, every rustle and shadow a potential threat. Yet, in that fragile calm, a bond was forming two unlikely companions, united by circumstance, courage, and the fragile hope that they could outsmart the dangers ahead. Little did they know, the shadows trailing them were patient and relentless. The 30 warriors were closer than they realized, tracking every movement with deadly precision. Every step Naeli and Eli took brought them closer to confrontation, to a moment that would test their bravery, loyalty, and ingenuity like never before. And as the sun climbed higher, illuminating the forest in golden light, both felt it, the quiet tension of destiny approaching, and the promise that their journey, though perilous, was only just beginning. The forest seemed to close in around Eli and Naeli as they pressed forward, the shadows growing longer with the afternoon sun. Every step felt heavier, each rustle of leaves or distant bird call making their hearts jump. Eli had learned to read the subtle signs of danger, the broken branches, the disturbed earth, the faint glint of sunlight reflecting off distant metal. And today, all those signs screamed a single truth. They were being hunted. "They're close," Nayeli whispered, gripping Eli's arm. Her limping leg slowed her pace, but determination kept her moving. 30 of them. "They won't stop." Eli's jaw tightened. "Then we won't let them catch us." He scanned the tree line, noting the positions of thick foliage and fallen logs. If they could use the forest to their advantage, they might survive this pursuit. Suddenly, a faint crunch of hooves against dirt reached their ears. 30 mounted warriors, their silhouettes barely visible through the trees, were following, riding with calculated precision. Their eyes were trained, unyielding, and merciless. Eli swallowed hard. This was no ordinary threat. They were experienced, organized, and deadly. "We need to split up. Draw them away from the path to your home," Eli suggested. "I can make noise. Lead some of them off. You get to safety." Nayeli shook her head. "I'm not leaving you." "You have to," Eli said firmly. "I'm small. I can move faster in the woods. You need to survive." He handed her a makeshift stick, sharpened at one end. "If anyone gets too close, defend yourself." The two exchanged a determined glance, understanding that trust and courage were their only weapons now. Eli dashed into the undergrowth, snapping twigs and kicking up dust to draw attention, while Nayeli moved quietly along a hidden path through the ferns and low trees. The warriors reacted instantly, some splitting off to chase the boy, others pressing toward Nayeli. Eli darted behind a fallen log, then rolled onto his side, narrowly avoiding a spear that whistled past him. He grabbed a thick branch, swinging it to create a barrier, then scrambled deeper into the forest. His heart pounded, adrenaline surging as he ducked behind rocks and trees, weaving a path designed to confuse and slow the warriors. Meanwhile, Nayeli limped through the hidden trail, focusing on the distant hill where her village lay. The forest canopy filtered the light, offering shadows to hide within, but each step was painful, and every snap of a branch underfoot threatened to betray her position. She clenched her jaw, forcing herself forward, guided by the hope that Eli's plan would succeed. After several tense minutes, Eli realized the warriors were closing in on Nayeli's path. Using the terrain, he triggered a small landslide of rocks from a steep incline, forcing the warriors to halt, momentarily buying her more time. He caught his breath, bloodied and exhausted, but not broken. Finally, as dusk approached, Nayeli reached a concealed opening near her village. Hidden behind thick brush, she glimpsed the smoke rising from the chimneys, the familiar shapes of her people. Relief flooded her, but fear remained. Eli was still out there, drawing the warriors away. The boy's courage had given her a chance to survive, a chance to reunite with her tribe. And though the danger wasn't over, a small, fierce hope burned in both their hearts. Together, they had outsmarted a force of 30 warriors, and the bond forged between them had grown stronger with every step, every risk, and every heartbeat in the wilderness of the Old West. Survival was never guaranteed, but courage, cleverness, and trust, these were the weapons that even 30 warriors could not easily defeat. The first light of dawn broke over the horizon, casting a golden glow across the village where Naeli had grown up. Birds began their morning chorus, and the mist rose from the river in soft, curling tendrils. For a moment, the world seemed peaceful, but Eli knew that calm was fragile. 30 warriors were still out there, relentless and determined, and the final confrontation was inevitable. Naeli led Eli through a hidden path into the heart of the village, where the elders and families were beginning to stir. The people recognized her immediately, their faces lighting up with relief and astonishment. For a moment, she was no longer just a fugitive, she was one of them again. "We must prepare," one of the elders said quietly, eyeing the distant tree line. "They will not stop until they have what they came for." Eli glanced at Naeli, seeing a mixture of fear and determination. "We'll face them together," he said. "You taught me courage, and now it's my turn." The warriors emerged from the forest, their horses kicking up dust, 30 strong and unyielding. They charged toward the village, confident and organized, expecting an easy victory. But they had underestimated the resilience and cunning of the 2 young heroes who had eluded them for days, using their knowledge of the terrain. Eli and Naeli led the villagers in clever traps and distractions. Fallen logs blocked paths, hidden pits slowed the horses, and smoke from carefully constructed fires created confusion. Every tactic bought precious time, and each delay chipped away at the warriors' confidence in the midst of the chaos. Eli spotted the leader of the warriors advancing toward Naeli. Without hesitation, he stepped in, blocking the path with nothing but a sharpened branch and unflinching determination. "You're not taking her," he said, voice firm and unwavering. The warrior leader sneered, but faltered as Eli's courage and the villagers' coordinated defense overwhelmed them. One by one, the warriors were driven back, retreating into the forest with the realization that brute strength alone could not overcome unity, strategy, and heart. As the dust settled, Naeli ran to her tribe, her eyes filling with tears of relief and joy. She turned back to Eli, embracing him tightly. "You saved me," she whispered. "I'll never forget you." Eli smiled, feeling a warmth he had rarely known. "We saved each other," he said softly. "And now you're home." The elders approached, offering gratitude and recognition to the small orphan who had braved the dangers of the wilderness. For the first time in his life, Eli felt a sense of belonging. He had entered this world as an outsider, but through courage, cleverness, and loyalty, he had earned a place among people who respected and valued him. The sun climbed higher, illuminating the village in warm, golden light. The river shimmered peacefully, the forest rustled softly, and the threat that had loomed so large only hours before had faded into memory. Eli and Naeli stood together, watching the horizon, knowing that while life in the Old West was never without danger, hope and bravery could shine even in the darkest of times. In that quiet moment, Eli realized something profound. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. Loyalty, compassion, and quick thinking had carried them through impossible odds. And while the story of a little orphan helping a limping native girl to safety might one day become legend, for Eli and Naeli, it was simply the beginning of a life filled with hope, friendship, and the enduring spirit of the frontier.